We're back with you tonight on In Focus, Newzroom Afrika, Channel 405. Thanks for staying on. Conversation continues then. Civil society organizations are heading to court to challenge what they call unfair exclusionary regulations and applications for the Social Relief of Distress Grant. Departments of Social Development and Finance, as well as SASSA, have come under increasing pressure over delays and exclusions of vulnerable people who previously qualified for the grant. The civil society organizations want the current application process declared unconstitutional. Joining us now to speak on their challenge is Rachel Bukasa, the Executive Director of Black Sash. Rachel, good evening, and thank you very much for your time and for joining us here on In Focus. So, tell me about what this reapplication process has actually created, because the department put this on to say, well, there are other people now who no longer qualify, that previously qualified, and therefore I suppose it's a way of sifting them out.
Yeah, so this is a classic case of throwing the baby out with the bath water, right? Trying to resolve one issue that could be resolved in another way, but resolving it in such a way that everyone else gets punished. And so essentially what these regulations and what these new rules essentially now mean is that a lot of people that were already receiving the grants, that were already identified as being in dire need of this grant since it came into, since it started in 2020, are now being excluded as a result of these new sort of regulations and rules around it. And so you have a process where more people are now disadvantaged from an already disadvantaged group.
Yeah. What is the rationale behind this? What is government saying they are now failing to do, or at least what has changed maybe with the situation of those people today that was not there 2020?
And that's exactly our argument, right? There is no rationale behind this. What this is essentially is that Treasury has identified an amount that they're going to put towards the social assistance, and then what SASSA and DSTV have to do is to make sure that they can only serve a certain number of people that will fall within this amount. And so essentially you're now arbitrarily sifting other people out, not because they're not deserving, but because you simply don't want to open the purse strings and make a process that serves all the people that are in dire need. So there isn't actually a rationale to it, except to meet budgetary constraints.
Yeah. From a Black Sash point of view, has the need increased, or is it, as the department sees it, that it has decreased? So it's no longer that 10 million that we were looking at, maybe slightly less.
No, in fact, it's not the 10 million we're looking at, it's about 16 million. Stats South Africa today, just this evening, have released stats around the number of people that need the grant now. And so it's even more than we thought. And so when you're in a situation where the economic situation is just getting more dire for people, and now you go acting in a manner as if to suggest there's economic recovery, as if to suggest that jobs are being created, that's simply not rational. Because now you have more people in trouble than initially, but instead of extending the social assistance, which is a constitutional obligation, instead of doing that, you're doing the opposite. And so, yes, it's more people that need it rather than less.
Yeah. And so what are you asking then the courts to do?
So what we're asking the court to do is to look at a few things, and I'm just going to highlight one or two here. One of the key things being that initially when the grant was introduced, there was a means test, so how much you had to make in order to qualify for this grant. And at the time, the numbers run away from me now, but it was around 500 and something rand. In order to say that if you have more than this amount, 500 and something in your account, then you don't qualify for the grant. They've gone ahead and now said that from that group that had initially qualified, now if you make 350 rand, so if you have 350 rand accumulative, which means in your account for the month, then you no longer qualify. So you have now essentially selected the poorest from the poor. Now, what about all these other people that have been relying on this grant since the beginning of it? And also, just when you notice that the food poverty line, for example, is at 624 rand, that is the bare minimum to ensure that someone does not starve. Now, if it's at 624 rand, how is your means test of wealth to be 350, where you decide that this person can no longer qualify for this? And one of the cases we highlight, in fact, it's in the case of many single mothers who, for example, receive a child grant. And so when that grant comes into their account, that constitutes over 350 Rand. But it's not for them, and they are unemployed, and they are needing it. So it's those kinds of arbitrary things, as well as the system being completely online, which is exclusionary to a lot of our people. And so those are the kinds of things we are asking the court to look at rather urgently.
Yeah. And so you're saying now the determining factor is whether there is money in your account at the time of when they are paying the grant. So if you've...
No.
Yes?
If during the course of the month, everything that comes in equals 350 Rand.
Right. So of the 16 million people, they will be checking your accounts every single month?
Yes, that's what they do. That's why there's also the suggestion around this reapplying every 3 months. It is extremely burdensome for those people that aren't in cities, and that it's a whole 2-day process for some of them to apply. Now you'll have them applying every 3 months.
Right. And in the meantime, what has happened then? Has money been released? Those at least who had not seen their payments this month, or are there still amounts that are outstanding?
There are amounts that are outstanding. In fact, the payments that are being paid now has nothing to do, there hasn't been a single payment for April or May that was outstanding. And so what they're paying now, for the ordinary person on the street who doesn't understand the system, the danger with that is that someone is just so grateful to receive it that actually there's been all these months where that pay had to have happened, but it hasn't yet. And so how do we as a country see that when we go months without paying a social grant to someone, what are we expecting that person to do? And so that impact has been really tremendous on the ground, and it has had dire, devastating impact on people.
Yeah. You're not only launching litigation action, I suppose, but there's also other campaigns that you're running around raising awareness on this issue.
Absolutely, and I think one of the biggest things we're doing, amongst other things, is making sure that each person does away with this narrative that being on a grant suggests you're lazy, or being on a grant means that you don't want to be employed. No, that's not how it works. That's a position of privilege. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Only a privileged person is able to say to someone, well, no, you clearly want a grant because, you don't want to work. But if you are facing the reality that we see in our communities every single day, you will understand how this is literally a lifeline for people, and how people will go to bed hungry without this. And so that narrative needs to change, because actually social grants and social assistance stimulates economies. It's been proven across various economies around the world. It stimulates the economy, whether it be formal or informal, and it makes the world essentially go around in that people are able to job hunt because they've got that social grant that allows them to have transport, to print CVs and all of that. And so that's one of the big things we're taking on also, that narrative.
Rachel, we appreciate your time, and thank you for raising these issues with us here tonight on In Focus. That is the Executive Director for Black Sash there, Rachel Bukasa.